So I'm very glad that our community and religious leaders understand what is at stake. Our religious leaders in particular are expressing their views in a way that shows sensitivity, compassion, and kindness, so as not to destabilize peace and harmony in our society. They have led many positive efforts to emphasize unity, not division. When the conflict first erupted, as all of you know, Mufti Ustaz Dr. Nazaruddin Muhammad Nasir wrote to the Chief Rabbi Mordechai Abijel in Singapore, who later replied to him, and both expressed empathy and solidarity with one another. The interreligious organization brought together various faith leaders to pray for peace and the safety of civilians in both Israel and Gaza. On such emotive issues, it makes all the difference to have religious leaders who understand what is happening and what is at stake for Singapore. They are able to guide their flock and help to hold the social cohesion and trust between our different faiths. Some may think that this guidance is not necessary, but they are mistaken. Just look at what's happening elsewhere. The more extreme religious leaders on all sides also tend to be the ones who are more emotional, more vocal in pressing their case, in advocating their own narratives. Those calling for peace, dialogue, and engagement tend to be the ones who are drowned out or silenced. What is the end result? The end result is not more light, but more darkness, not more peace and harmony, but more division and hatred in society. And we certainly do not want that to happen in Singapore. So we should be very, very grateful for the leadership shown by our religious leaders like Mufti and Chief Rabbi. I thank them for their leadership. And I call on all Singaporeans to emulate their examples and ensure we never let anything divide us or drive a wedge in our society. All of us as individuals can do our part too. The government will continue to provide safe spaces for such sensitive conversations to take place. But we should do our part to be respectful and constructive in our dialogue and discourse, both online and offline. We should strive to listen to and empathize with one another, especially when we disagree and have different views. And we should not hesitate to call out inflammatory language which seek to turn communities against each other. In this way, we can collectively strengthen the peace and social cohesion that is essential to the Singaporean way of life. I'm glad that all members of this House are with the government on this, as we have heard in all the speeches so far. The WP and the PSP have put out their party's position on this matter, and indeed their positions are consistent with the government's position, indeed the national position. We were a little concerned at first with the Workers' Party statement for the reasons highlighted, because it stopped short of condemning the actions of Hamas. It referred to it as a military operation rather than a terrorist act. The leader of the opposition, Mr. Singh, has explained the context and the circumstances behind the Workers' Party statement, so we understand. But I'm sure Mr. Singh would also appreciate, without the benefit of his explanation earlier, there was ambiguity about that statement. There were questions raised about the Workers' Party's stance on the actions of Hamas. And some might even ask whether the WP had deliberately overlooked this just to appear more sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. So I'm very glad that Mr. Singh has stood up and explained the WP's position clearly and has condemned Hamas's acts as acts of terrorism. And perhaps if he is so minded, Mr. Singh might update the Workers' Party's social media platform to reflect this position so that there is no ambiguity about the matter whatsoever. This is not a trivial matter. This is not just nitpicking at words. It is a key point of principle because national security is at stake. And so, indeed, in situations like this, we must stand united. Politics must stop at the water's edge. And that means on external matters where national security is at stake, political parties should not try to outflank the government just to score political points. Let's not risk our precious unity for short-term political gain, not when our collective security and fundamental interests are at stake. All of us owe this basic duty to Singaporeans.